Just to take a step back, in July, Greenland Statistics reported that there was about, slightly over 56,000 people in Greenland. And if you think about that, that's over 56,000 nuanced perspectives about the future of this area. And we set out on a journey over the last 8 weeks to try to get a little bit closer to the world inside of all of those different people. And of course, it's impossible to reach everyone in Greenland, but we want to tell you a little bit about how we tried. So, how do people think about the changes that are underway in Greenland? If you think about it, you can almost hold up a crystal ball and gaze into the future and think, what is changing? How is it changing? And what does that mean? And we tried to set out with a survey to find out more about that. And so the Greenland Perspectives Survey is a research project about the future of Greenland, but it's also an immense collaboration between so many different individuals. And we are immensely grateful for the help, generosity, and life-saving support of Alan and Greenland Perspective. But I really want to direct the attention today to the heart and soul of our team. We have been incredibly fortunate to collaborate very closely with our team of researchers and research assistants from Greenland and from the university here, and also even broader network of collaborators all across the world as a part of a larger international effort. So real quickly, I just want to say a few words and sort of direct the attention to part of my team. We actually traveled up the west and north side of Greenland. It was a long journey, and I want to thank Ulu for all of her work and sort of persistence. Thank you so much. And also Hans Peter, who couldn't be here today, he also played a huge part and logged a lot of kilometers as we went throughout the journey. We also want to thank Bettina, who has played a huge role. If you look in the very back row, you'll see Bettina blushing. Bettina has been amazing, and she's been truly invaluable, especially surveying here in Nuuk, which is, of course, a challenging area to survey. Time and attention is a scarce resource here. And so thank you for all of your persistence and help. And I'll hand it over to Gustav to say a little bit about his team.
Sure. Maybe we should present ourselves as well.
Yeah.
So my name is Gustav. I am a PhD at the University of Copenhagen. I focus on development economics and political economics. And I found Kelton here, and we decided that this project was exactly what we both wanted to do for our PhDs. And who are you?
Some kid from the mountains in Colorado. I'm also a new PhD student at the University of Copenhagen. You probably can tell from my accent that I'm not Danish. I grew up in the States. I studied human environment relations at Cornell University. And my passion has always been on the sort of transactions between people and the environments that we live within. I have a background in human environment relations and social ecology. So, but again, I sort of want to direct the attention that we've been super fortunate to have an incredible team that has really been the backbone of this project. And we are, I think, so humbled by the work ethic that you guys have shown, and also the sort of collaborative prowess that you have. The conversations that we've had as we've been traveling have been truly inspiring, and I really look forward to collaborating with you guys in the future as we start to write this up.
Cool. And as Kelton said, the real work in this project have been done by our Greenlandic research assistants. And here we have Nava, who traveled with me to the south of Greenland and to the east. We also have Nadine, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. They have both done a fantastic work, and we've had an awesome trip. And I'm I'm actually going to miss it. Before we started the trip, we were really looking forward to this date when it was all over. But now I could easily see myself do this 2 more months or a year. It would have been great, but it's over. And I guess we should also mention our supervisor, David Rey Lassen, who has been very supportive throughout the process, and Minnie Krosing, who's my supervisor, and have been giving us a lot of input on some of the core pieces in the survey. And one last time, Alan here, who has been amazing and really patient with us and supporting us on the ground as we've needed a lot of help, to be honest, fixing things that was mandatory. So thank you, Alan.
Thanks for quite literally sometimes lifting us up on your shoulders. You thought you had 1 baby, but you had 3. Okay, so a project like this wouldn't be possible without a larger collaborative network and the support of Kraksfund Byforskning. Kraksfund is an institute for urban economic research in Copenhagen, and they fund a lot of research looking at urban dynamics and urban issues. We've been sort of immensely thankful for their support and seeing the sort of possibility and potentials of this project from very early days. And again, the support of Greenland Perspective, I think building a bridge between universities is immensely valuable, but I also think activating research here in the University of Greenland is even more valuable, and thank you for letting us play a small part of that. It means a lot. We should also say thanks to Greenland Statistics for supporting us throughout, yeah, we'll get this show on the road. So, a project like this doesn't happen in isolation. The people that you see up here are kind of the tip of the iceberg. And inspiration for a project like this can be quite distributed. And I just wanted to say thanks to Birger Poppel and the work that he did with Slika. This was I think, immensely important project, and it certainly has been inspiring for us from the very beginning as we thought about how to set out on this large adventure. We also want to say thanks and send our appreciation to Lena Holm from the Institute here. Some of her work with the meaning of ice was also very generative and really contributed to a lot of ideas for how we could sort of build on some of her very sort of local research and think about some comparisons across Greenland. And we also wanted to say thanks to Tony Robinson from the University of Chicago for also inspiring us with some of his research, and also want to direct some well-deserved gratitude towards Anthony Lasarowitz from the university, or from Yale University. They've done an immense project around the Arctic in northern Canada, northern Alaska, and now the US, and more recently the larger world, looking at people's perceptions of climate and what actually exists inside of our heads when we think about climate change. So all of these actors really helped to sort of get us going in a way, and directed our attention a little bit towards Greenland. And I think it's safe to say that Greenland is a country undergoing many changes. And there's multiple levels of change that you can think about in Greenland. We've constructed a little framework here, building on the research of others, to try to sort of conceptualize this, that we have a lot of physical changes. The pace of change in Greenland in particular, and the Arctic in general, is sort of faster than many other parts of the world when it comes to changes in long-term patterns in temperature, but also in landscape-based changes that correspond. We can also think about the sort of economic changes that are happening here, not just because of changes in climate, but also larger processes of globalization, and of course, continued influence of mixed dynamics. And we can also think about the social side of environmental change, which really includes the sort of cultural backbone, the social dynamics within Greenland, the mobility of people, and the urbanization that is ongoing right outside of our door here at the university. So when we step back and think about all of the changes that Greenland are sort of undergoing, a question comes up, how do we actually disentangle these different changes when we try to research them? Because there's a lot of big changes happening. And so our approach to try to do this was a survey primarily. This was our research instrument. I always wish that we had like a photo of a guitar being played, because when you hear the term research instrument, you kind of think of like an electric guitar in my case. But it's the Greenland Perspective Survey is almost equally glamorous to us in the sense that it's sort of the way that we try to get closer to the perceptions and the beliefs of different people around Greenland. And so this survey has many different components that we try to identify and think about what is sort of happening out there in people's minds. We want to understand the different interpretive communities of how people are thinking about the future and these types of change. We also want to understand people's sort of anticipated behaviors. What are they doing and what are they planning to do because of some of these changes? And that's really thinking speculatively about the future. And we also want to understand people's beliefs in regards to issues like climate change and issues like independence, and the opportunities that come along with these changes. So not just the risks, but also the opportunities. And of course, the impacts. So these are some of the different items that we try to get closer to through the survey, but quantitative research alone only can go so far in inspiring the next version of the survey. And so throughout this process, we've also been doing visual storytelling and in-person interviews with different actors in each of the different locations that we've been going to. And we're really looking forward later this year to releasing a public online interactive report to actually share some of these very local grounded expertise and interviews that we've really had the fortune of sharing. So I'm going to hand it over to Gustav to talk a little bit about the scope of the project and the methods that we use to get closer to people's thoughts on the future.
Super, thank you. All right, so I have this sort of boring part that I will try to keep you awake. And if we seem a bit tired or unexcited, it's not because we are unexcited, it's because we haven't slept lately. So forgive us, please forgive us for that. Okay, so we choose to use a survey to basically answer the questions that we were posing. And this is Greenland, I guess you recognize it. It's basically a lot of islands spread out on this big island that is Greenland, and it's sort of difficult to get to, and it is impossible to reach all of these places, obviously. So I guess you're wondering, how did we end up with the sample that we did? And I'm going to run you through that. But first, some things that we were thinking about when we constructed the survey was that there are some problems with survey item as your research instrument, and one of these is outside influence. So basically, there's a lot of things that could happen during a surveying period like this one. Some of you might have heard about the political crisis that occurred right now. Could definitely have an impact on some of the items, one could imagine. So we're happy it happened now and not before. But what we did to sort of mitigate these problems was to try to stay as short as time as possible in the field. That means that we don't stay for too long in the locations that we visit either. And there's another reason for that, and that is that when we arrive to a place, especially these small settlements, people notice us, and people might be curious in the project, and that might actually influence the way people respond to the questions. So we try to mitigate that by saying as short time as possible. There are some other things that we don't want to influence our answers. Basically, you could imagine that the one serving impacts the responses. Therefore, we control for that. We control for a lot of things like weather, time, to try to get the as unbiased as possible answers you could get to items like the ones we asked. All right. But now, how did we end up with the sample that we ended up with? Firstly, we did a choice that we're only going to include locations that have at least 50 residents. And the reason is basically that with less, the adult population is so small that we can't do any reliable regressions on that. But in order to choose these places then, we could imagine that we would do a randomization and we'd basically miss out on some important parts of Greenland. For example, if we just randomly selected 10 towns from here, we might miss the south or something like that. So instead of doing that, we stratified the locations into geographic regions, and we ended up with 6 of these following the municipality borders as of this year. One exception to this rule was that we split Semersok into east and west, which we deem a very important division because the experiences are so different in the west and the east. The next step was to divide, to create more layers, and basically we did this in the demographic dimension, where the towns and settlements are thought to be very different in terms of how people are living, what they're experiencing, and what their expectations are of the future. So we divide the locations into settlements and town following Greenland Statistics Division. And then we end up with 1 town and 1 settlement in each of these geographic regions. We do have 2 important exceptions to this as well. Nuuk was, what do we call it, purposefully sampled because it's such a big part of the Greenlandic population and it's so important. So we wanted to go to Nuuk. We needed to go to Nuuk. So we selected it. We also extended the sample by including Uppernavik as well. And the reason is that we had the possibility to do that, and it gave us an extended sample where we're going to be able to compare different experiences within Avannaata Kommuna. So that was the reason. All right. So then we randomly selected 12 towns, and we included, 11 towns. We included Nuuk and Uppernavik and ended up with a sample of 13 locations. And within these locations then, we randomized the citizens, the residents as well. So basically, within each of these locations, we randomly selected a sample that corresponds to the population of that stratified layer. So this is a bit boring, a bit technical. I'll run through it. And Kelton has done some awesome visualizations of how that looks like. The power of randomization is this, that our sample in the end pretty well reflects the actual population in Greenland. So this is age plotted in a density distribution. And you can see that our sample, the age of the respondents, or the selected targeted respondents, it very well reflects the age of the actual Greenlandic population. And randomization is by no means, what do we call it? It's not really convenient. It means that we have to travel to far corners of the country, and that has been a task, and Nava has been, whoops, sorry for that. Can we lower the sound first? Okay, just to continue. So we've traveled to the far corners of Greenland, basically. And it's been very interesting to see how different these parts are. You can imagine that Nuuk and these settlements we visited in the north and in the east, the experiences vary so much. So we deem it very important for a survey project like this to try to get out to all corners of Greenland, basically. Yes!
Jeg tager den lige på dansk. Jeg håber ikke, I har noget imod det. Men jeg hedder Navana, og som Gustav har sagt før, så er jeg med som forskningsassistent her i projektet. Og jeg går her i December til hverdag og læser HA erhvervsøkonomi på 3. semester. Jeg skal snakke lidt om de praktiske ting, som vi lavede, og hvad vi har lavet her i projektet. Jeg skal for eksempel snakke om de her breve, som vi har sendt ud, inden vi rejste ud i vores tur. Vi har sendt 1400 breve ud til de 1400 tilfældige udvalgte. Og heri stod der en hel masse informationer omkring, hvem vi er, og hvad projektet går ud på, og at det er frivilligt at deltage i vores projekt. Heri stod der også noget omkring vores sessions, som vi lavede, som man kunne komme til, hvis man var tilfældig udvalgt. Og her kunne man så udfylde de her spørgeskemaer, som vi delte ud til dem, eller også kunne de komme til de her sessions og lave dem i sessionsne. Til det her sessions, der havde vi nogle gange meget travlt, som I kan se. Vi løb lidt rundt og snakkede med rigtig mange folk. Men vi lavede også nogle ekstra sessions, så det var, at vi gjorde det nemmere for os. Så vi skulle ud til de her personer så mange gange. Men vi havde rigtig travlt. Og vi her kan I se, at vi har lige et eksempel på, hvordan det så ud, når vi var ude at gå. Og vores daglige arbejde i halvanden måned var at gå rundt og banke på døre. Hver by havde vi en liste af adresse med navne på, og hvor vi på en app i vores telefoner kunne se, hvor vi skulle gå hen. Og der havde vi en app, der hed Maps.me, og det var, at vi havde nogle benummer på, så vi kunne finde de her personer, som var tilfældigt udvalgte. Vi havde et mål om, at vi skulle mindst 3 gange ud til de her tilfældigt udvalgte personer, hvor vi efter 3. forsøg skulle kaste en mønt, hvor det var, at det skulle være en tilfældigt udvalg, altså blat eller krone, hvor det var, at vi skulle gå til højre eller venstre naboen. Så det var tilfældigt. Men det var meget smukt, at vi i de fleste byer og bygder, der så det sådan her ud, så vi nød det rigtig meget. Og vi skulle, efter vi havde gået de her 3-4 gange, så skulle vi også hente de her surveys igen. Så det tog os lidt flere end 3 eller 4 gange for at få de her surveys tilbage. Så vi har her mig, hvor I kan se, hvordan det var. Hvad var det? Yes. Tak. Og sådan var det for det meste af tiden. At vente.
Hej, Greenlandic Perspectives Survey. Imam sisunitin pagkatapos ng
Ja, sådan og i rigtig mange tilfælde, så sagde de selvfølgelig ja til at være med, så det var vi heldige med. Ja, og her kan I så se, Jeg gik med mit ur, så vi har sådan et eksempel på, hvor meget vi gik. Vi har fra vores data sådan cirka antal 475 har jeg banket på døre, altså huse, og så har vi de her 1200, hvor det var, at jeg gik frem og tilbage til de her huse. Så vi har altså gået rigtig, rigtig meget og gået frem og tilbage. Vi kan i den her graf se, i den øverste her, der har jeg gået 18,5 kilometer på en dag, og det var sådan i cirka halvanden måned. Så vi gik utrolig meget, men jeg er altså sådan aktiv til hver dag, så jeg håber, min håndboldtræner hører, hvad jeg siger lige nu. Og så har jeg en lille historie med. Det er et fint billede af vores kære leder Gustav. Og I kan se, at han sidder på en meget fin lille seng med Hello Kitty på, og nogle prinsessekjoler bagpå. Vi havde flere steder, hvor vi skulle bo, og vi alle tre, vi rejste, vi var meget konkurrencemindet. Så vi lavede en masse forskellige konkurrencer om, hvem der skulle få den dårlige seng. Og det var som altid Gustav, der tabte den. Så han fik den her Hello Kitty-seng, som han sov på i næsten 10 dage, og det synes vi var lidt sjovt. Yes. Mens vi surveyede, der skulle vi ikke kun passe på med at blive bidt af myg eller hunden, som vi skulle forbi, når vi skal ind til husene. Men vi skulle også passe på, at der ikke var nogen isbjørn, der skulle bide os. Fordi et af de tilfældigt udvalgte bygder, der var der en meget stor isbjørn, som jeg håber, I kan se, hvor stor den er. Men der var der en isbjørn i Tiderilak, hvor vi var i Østgrønland, og det fik vi også lige med på oplevelsen. Det synes jeg lige, I skulle se. Ja. Mm. Yes.
Yeah. Can you just press? Yes. Hello, everyone. You can just see me up there where I'm picking up one of the Finnish surveys in Radarsvar in this like beautiful weather and surroundings. I can say that this is my everyday life, but no. And my name is Ulungwar, and I'm from one of the small settlements or towns in North Greenland called Uummannaq. And I'm part of this team currently as a research assistant. And beside of that, I'm a master's student in the West Nordic Studies. It is Simatosafik as my home university. So I'm going to talk about the process and the people we have met and the home interviews. So in my case, I can tell you that I was not an outdoor person at all when the project started. So I didn't really know what I ran into, but this project involves a lot of walking all day long, every single day, no matter how the weather is. So I struggled the first week or 2 or 3, I don't know. But I really need a wall above my head and the warmth. But guess what? I became one of them. So I can't really believe myself to say that I'm an outdoor person now. So the process of the journey was exciting. You never know what is waiting for you in a new town and the new people to meet. And sometimes it can be very challenging, mostly because of the weather, which was really unpredictable. I think we got a small glimpse of how it is to be a fisherman, a hunter, a carpenter, since the weather can really affect how productive we can work for a day. And of course, just knocking on someone else's house was a huge challenge. It was something I have never dreamed of doing. I can admit it was really embarrassing as a beginner, but you start to kind of like it when you start to feel excited to meet new people and hear about different perspectives. Because these participants are the people you will have never met if it wasn't for the project. And yeah. And the people, as it was mentioned earlier, the participants were randomly selected by Greenland Statistics. So during this journey, we have been interacting with different kind of people in all ages, abilities, and state of life. For example, we have met a lot of young single moms, hunters, fishermen, wealthy people, people who are dying. This is extreme case. People who have just been informed that I have got a cancer. Grieving moms who have lost their sons in the sea a few weeks earlier. Alcohol and has abuse. But I can emphasize that the majority of the people we have met are well functioning. And no matter the state of life, people were welcoming and kind, which makes our work so much easier, and we really, really appreciate that. And home interviews. So we try to reach people where they are in life, and to be inclusive as possible of different abilities. So if people were not able to take the survey because they have a bad eyesight or reading difficulties, so we will take the time to read the survey aloud at their homes or during the sessions. So this means that this project involves so many kind of voices from different type of people from different type of social groups. So not only from the people who are interested in the topics we are dealing with, but also from the people who don't usually raise their voices to say their opinions. Our goal was to include the full range of voices and perspectives across Greenland. Yes, this is my team leader, Kilton. The picture was taken in Greenlandic before we left off to Greenlandic through ASEAN. So the picture, in my opinion, the picture says everything, because it is a hard work. You need to sacrifice yourself to run this project and to make sure that the people get the surveys. So you can, in this picture, you can see Kilton sacrificing himself to this project, and we really appreciate that. But it's also how people remember us in North Greenland. Yes, I can briefly say that I'm going to use the data in my master thesis. So I also really appreciate that I was part of this project. So my master thesis will be about the question of independence and about mostly about the people's opinions and experiences here in Greenland. So, thank you.
Thanks, Ulu, and we look forward to working with you on that. So we'll jump a little bit from our process. I hope that you guys feel a little bit closer to where we've been and what life on the road is like. And now we're going to jump back towards the data and some of the early results. And so to start off on the different thematic sections, there were sort of three core themes that we were sort of inquiring about when it comes to the future of Greenland. We were curious again about the sort of climatic change and people's perceptions and thoughts on climate change. We were also interested in people's thoughts on the sort of political, economic dimension of Greenland and how life might be changing. And we were also interested in the sort of social and also urbanization piece. So this first chapter of the early results is focused on climate. And I just want to point out real quick, this was a global study of people's awareness and risk perceptions of climate change all around the world. And does anyone see what's missing on this map? Yeah, like, what about Greenland? And so this was part of the motivation early on, that it seemed kind of wrong that Greenland wasn't on this map. And we looked at the SLEEKA results, which asked some questions about general awareness of climate change, but we didn't have really any data. There still isn't really any good data about people's thoughts about whether climate change is benefiting or harming them, and some of their other views about what climate change means for them. So moving forward, we sort of set out on this large journey, and just as early as this morning, actually, Ulu, you were out picking up surveys this morning. This is from yesterday. Just want to point out, again, because of the randomization, we kind of go everywhere, but the results that we're going to be talking about today are so early because we're actually still collecting the data. And so we want to put sort of a big parentheses around what we show you today, that this is sort of early results. We're going to be coming back later this year to give the full presentation with all of the different dimensions. But the caveat with what we show you is that this is going to be a subsection of the data, and it's coming largely from South and East Greenland. So these are the sort of early results you could think of. And everything that we're presenting today comes from this part of the sample. So we can't, generalize to all of Greenland for this by any means, and we just want you to make sure that you know that, so that we don't have any sort of misinterpretations, and we'll come back to present the full results. So the climate section has a number of exciting components that we'll be coming back to talk about. Again, these sort of environmental change perceptions, beliefs and attitudes, impacts. What are the impacts that people are actually perceiving on the ground in their local environments, and also those risk and opportunity perceptions, along with policy preferences about different climate-related measures here in Greenland. Okay, so I'm going to present just one part of this, and this is related to climate and environmental change perceptions. And this is just focused on the basic question, which is, personal experience of climate change. So we asked the question, have you personally experienced the effects of climate change? Very just simple yes or no. And what you'll see is that, compared to other parts of the world, this maybe unsurprisingly, is extremely high. That people are experiencing climate change now. Not in the future, not necessarily in the long run, but already. And that's really, I think, quite interesting. It's too early to tell, to see if there are some sort of differences in how people are personally experiencing climate change in settlements and towns, but we already can see some sort of interesting signs that we'll want to follow back on to see, is it possible that in a town you're a little bit insulated from the immediacy or the proximity to the effects of climate change. So when we look at this, this graph, it raises the next question, okay, people are experiencing it, what do they think about it? And that's what we're excited to present later this fall. And we will send out a big public invitation for that, and look forward to sharing those results with you and also the university and collaborating as well. So move on to Gustav.
Thank you. All right, so I was sort of responsible for designing the political economic part of the survey. We have a number of items there as well, a number of themes. For example, we look at the question of independence, which I'm excited about, but we're not doing that today. Today we look at trust in institutions. And why is that important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons, one being that some degree of trust is necessary for a well-functioning democracy. It's also important for economic growth. A number of studies have shown that more trust means easier to have a high level of tax compliance and all that stuff. It's important for policy implementation. Basically, it's important for any country that wants to be well-functioning. So what I present here is just the average, let's see, I almost don't remember, the average trust, what I call it average trust, it's the answers to the question on a scale from 1 to 5, to what extent do you trust, and then ... this institution. I guess I was a bit surprised. Again, as Kelton has stated, these are super preliminary results. And it only contains the answers from respondents in 4 towns and settlements, east and west, east and south. Yes, and basically this answers the question that we stated in the quiz, which we'll get back to later. But I guess you can see whether or not you were right already here. To show some variation across Greenland, we can see that east, in comparison to south, is a little bit less trusting of the Greenland's government, Greenlandic government, but even more so when we just plot in a histogram the trust in the Danish government. All right. So we have another part, another basically, what do we call it? Online report that is coming out in February. It will focus on the demographic changes in Greenland. Urbanization will be the main theme of that report. So we asked people if they're moving, where they're moving, and why they're moving. So we're going to have some interesting data on that. Basically, it's easy to look back in time with the data from Greenland Statistics, looking at where did people move, but we know less about where people will move in 5 years. So we included that item in our survey. There will also be some more stuff about environmental policy preferences, and Kelton will just lead you through that part.
Thanks, Gustav. Great. So, in a time of change, there's always questions of economic growth and also environmental conservation. And they're kind of two parts of the same coin. And so we asked this question on environmental policy preferences: what do you think is more important? Protecting the environment, even if it costs jobs? Economic growth, even if it leads to environmental problems? Or no opinion? And this is an item that we're not pulling out of a hat. This has also been used across northern Canada and Alaska as well. It sort of gets to that question of what people prioritize with development. And so again, just looking at South and East Greenland results, it was quite interesting seeing that protecting the environment, even if it costs jobs, was actually deemed as overall more important. Okay. So we want to go back to the crystal ball that we started out with in the quiz that you took, so that you guys can look at sort of what you thought and also compare it to the early results from our survey. We'll just get that set up real quick.
I guess. All right, so we'll just take you through this. I guess this question was difficult, wasn't it? 10 alternatives, that's not very kind. Normally you get 4 or something. But how did we do? Pretty well. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Let's jump to the next item. So which of the following institutions does a randomly selected sample of residents from the towns trust the most? Worse. But you weren't too far, because the local municipality was the second most trusted institution. Let's move to the third item. I guess if you would have flipped a coin, it would have been something like this. No, so this is, we have the last item. How did we do? No, sorry. Next. Did I? Yeah, here. And this one, you got, a majority of you got it right. So I guess this sort of leads us back to the reason we started the project. I think a lot of the questions we asked in the survey, no one has asked them to the Greenlandic population before. Some of them people have been asking. But basically, this project was constructed and was implemented because we wanted to get the data that will be able to answer these questions. So we really hope it will benefit the research community here at the university, in Copenhagen, our own PhDs, and a lot of other interesting projects that's coming out of it. So I guess we'll just move back to the last two slides.
Yeah, just take it real quick. So yeah, and I think it's important to influence that behind this really, rich data set, each pixel of the data set is a person, and each opinion is valuable. And I think that, we've spent a lot of time really going to where people are and seeing their everyday lives, and it's been very humbling to go out there. But this next part will be, I think, equally exciting, which is sharing this knowledge with society and with also the international community at large. And so we look forward to that process and coming back here also later this year. And as Gustav mentioned, he was previously teaching a statistics course here. We've also been in talks about wanting to do more collaborative projects together with the university, and also teaching and sharing of knowledge. And so if you have also ideas or you're excited about the project, please come up and talk to us. We're really just getting started, and I think it's always better together. I also want to point out, if we look up here for a second, that you can think about a country like Greenland as almost like a body. It's always changing. You're always changing. We're always changing. And if you take out a stethoscope, you can start to measure the heartbeat. And so we've just measured a beat. And we really hope to come back and actually continue to measure how the beat and the public opinion about the future in Greenland changes over time. And so this is a longer term goal and initiative, but what we've started here, we really hope is just the beginning, and we really look forward to collaborating with researchers here on that future. So thank you so much for giving us the time and attention, staying awake. Hope that you guys had some delicious coffee and cake. And on that note, I hope you also have some delicious questions to ask us.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. Before everybody leaves, I just want to say thank you to you, to Gustav and Kelton, and of course the entire research team. I think that your project has been sort of a model for international collaboration between a project that comes from abroad and engages with the Greenlandic scientific community and community at large as well. So there's a lot of reason to commend that and applaud that. So thank you very much. For the questions, we are going to use this blue box, which is mic number 4. Yes, it is. It's mic number 4. And Navana has promised to help me.
Be careful, she plays handball.
So please feel free to ask questions. Thank you.
Og er det dig, der?
Hello? Yeah? Okay. Why do you think your data are getting more biased if you stay there longer?
Good question. So, for example, we played some economic games in the survey with respondents, and basically the first ones that take the survey, they will have no information about it, these games, but possibly, we don't know this and we're going to control for it, but possibly as the time go, people talk about what we're doing there and they get more information about what we do, so their actions could differ because of that. But very good question.
Ja. Værsgo.
You kind of teased us about if Greenlanders actually think that climate change is a good thing or a bad thing. There is some qualitative research that I think has made up this myth that Greenlanders don't really care about climate change. So if you can just, I guess you've been looking just a little bit, so if you can just debunk that myth now, and we can talk about it later, I guess.
Well, I mean, I think it's a great point. And there's actually two myths that you often hear in regards to Greenland and climate change. One is, I think, in the popular press, which often says that, exclusively almost Greenland is going to benefit from climate change. Another myth is that people don't care. And so we, just to check, asked a question specifically to inquire, is climate change an important or unimportant issue to you? And so we'll check and get back to you on that and give you some data so that we can dispel the myth or confirm it.
Just now when Rasmus asked a question, I realized I should have mentioned that he's one of the professors here that I hope to work with the data on political dimensioning, and that part fell out of my presentation.
Hi. I would like to know, did you ask questions about the dog sledging or the dog?
Yeah, actually, inspired by the Connect project that you've worked on, we actually added a question, and deep down inside, I wish I would have asked more. But we did get one, and we're excited to also share that with you. We did ask people, in addition to their thoughts on whether climate change will benefit or harm them and their family, we also asked them that same question with regards to the sled dogs. And so, most of the data on the sled dogs right now is sort of pooled from Greenland Statistics in terms of, I think, dog registration. I'm not sure how Greenland Statistics gets that, but it's sort of an overall count over time. But it doesn't actually get to what people think in regards to, whether they think climate change is helping or hurting the dogs. And I can say, just from early on data entry, that you do see both sides of the coin, but we'll get a better sense of what the public is thinking, if there are some trends or overall sort of, preferences with regards to those. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for a very inspiring presentation and for a great initiative. And I think I promised you once that I wouldn't go too much into methodological details, so I won't.
Please.
But a question I would like to ask, with the experience that you have now, if you were going to do another survey next week, was there something from what you've learned now that you say, well, definitely we'll approach that in a different way?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I mean, throughout this process, and I think Ulu can attest, I think Ulu's probably tired of me saying, do you have any thoughts on how we could do this better? We've been kind of collecting, feedback, because we view this survey again as a long-term project, and we also understand that early on, this is sort of the ripest period of development where we can learn from the experiences that we have. And I think one of the principal learnings that if I could go back and do it again, I don't know if Gustav would agree, but on my part, I think it would be nice. We had 2 teams. It would be, wonderful to have, twice as many, and to also then, go to a greater number of settlements in each of the strata. It's sort of one of my takes on that, Gustav.
I would agree. One of the biggest mistakes we did was not applying for more money. That would have been, because then we would also have been able to continue this trip.
He never wants to go back.
No. It's a lot of things. As Kelton mentioned, we have this master document underway with things we would do differently. I think the biggest one is really that you wanna go to more places, but Kelton expanded on this already. Possibly then you would just use the old Communia borders where you have I think 16 or something, so we'd have the double amount of places to go to. But that's for next time, right?
Yeah, double amount the places to go to, twice the number of teams. So that,
Okay, yeah, we'll see. More questions?
Yeah, over here.
Hasse.
It seems like you have a lot of themes. When I see it, I can't see how the survey was, but it seems like you have a lot of themes you talk about with these people, a lot of questions about big things. What was your thoughts on having that many big themes when it comes to Greenlandic society in one survey? And just one small question. Was it 475 respondents, or how many? I didn't see. I just saw the household count, but how many respondents do you have?
So we're not really sure yet,
Okay.
but we have we're gonna end somewhere between 600 and 700 respondents. Yes, and the first question was it's very broad. I completely agree. And the reason is, firstly, that we see these big changes within politics, within climate, and within economic changes as sort of overlapping and connecting. And it was kind of ideal that Kelton had his main interest in the climate part and sort of the intersection with how that impacts people's behavior and people's economic life and so on. Whereas I have I'm from economics, and I have this sort of intersection between economics and politics. So it was sort of what came out of our collaboration, and we think it's a big survey. We had 80 questions. I think it was just what was sort of tolerable for people. I wouldn't make it bigger, for sure. But I'm happy we included the parts we did, to be honest.
Also, just one note on that. As we were going, it was always interesting to also think about the flip side for the future of what are the issues, the sort of future issues that people are the most interested in. Because of course we can come, from theory and building on the previous research, also of professors here in this institution. But it's also equally important to, look back in the mirror, or I guess through the other side, and see, okay, do people have specific thoughts or concerns about the future in their local area that could inform future questions? And I think that was an exciting sort of sub-research agenda as we went along, and the qualitative interviews that we did were really helpful for getting closer to where people were, in their homes, in their local communities, and what some of those issues that we might ask about, next time. And we also tried to be, I think, really careful and intentional about, overlapping just to the right amount with previous work. We actually also talked with Birger before we came here to make sure that we were sort of harmonizing with what Slika already did. And that in some cases meant including some items from Slika to provide another sort of checkpoint in the SLICA database, but also in some cases making sure that we would cover other areas that weren't being covered, for instance, by like the health survey that is ongoing. And I think that coordination between different research groups is really important going forward. Any other questions?
I've got the blue thing here.
Yes.
Thank you very much for an amazing presentation to all the four of you. It's been a pleasure to listen to. I would be interested in having you to elaborate a bit on the dissemination process from now on, both to the public, to the research community, but also to the general public. You mentioned online papers, but do you have? You probably have other plans. I would be interested in listening to that.
Yeah, I think something that we decided really early on was that oftentimes when you are publishing papers, and this is something maybe is too close to home, but sometimes it takes a long time for the knowledge that's been collected in a big project like this to actually reach the public. And so we've actually coordinated to make sure that when we do the public release of results, which will be scattered this fall and then early spring, this will be through like an online website, but it will be descriptive results first. So we're going to do descriptives on the survey items and make sure that we get that data out to the public. But we're also excited, as we've been making contacts with local dissemination points, whether that's the local town museums, and we're looking forward to finding ways of situating the findings and feeding back to the local communities that we visited. A lot of people were really interested to learn more, and so we're excited to make sure that they get the sort of feedback and get to think and reflect on what other people think in different towns and across Greenland as well. So I think that's one approach to get around the classic academic problem of file or papers being out the door but not on the table. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being so patient with us.
One last.
Got another one.
So I know you have a lot of data to process, but when do you think the next big reveal will be?
Yeah. I think the next big one will be end of November is when we have the climate report going online. And we are currently planning a presentation here at the university in Nuuk that will be scheduled around the same time. So we'll keep you posted, but that's going to be, I think, a really exciting time to kind of, look and really see the full sample that we also collected from North and West Greenland, and that will include Nuuk as well. There's going to be a lot of fascinating items in that. Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe just to expand a bit on your question there, if I think beyond sort of just descriptives and correlation, we've worked a bit with trying to get at causal estimates of some things. So, for example, I'm going to look at economic expectations and independence and try to find a causal relation there. And I think these items where we also try to get at causality is basically going to be what constitutes the papers, the research that are going to come out of this. But I think that will take a much longer time to process that, because when we make causal claims, we want to be very sure about what we're saying. And yeah, I think with that maybe we should end. Do you have something, Alan?
No, I just want to say thank you to you guys, the presenters here, the research team, and thank you to the audience for joining us today for the presentation. And we hope to see you again for the next presentations in which we will dig deeper into the results. So hope to see you again.